Hi everyone, I'm Stan from Eagle Vision. I'm here again with Dr. Jamie Sherrah. Jamie, welcome. And we're talking about machine learning. So in this episode on research, we'll talk about mainly what tools can be used for property developers and architects and other consultants, and what they can use for helping them ascertain best uses and those sort of things. So Jamie, risk analysis comes up in terms of research. We might have some variables that we might come up with, but they may or may not be right. How do machine learning deal with that?
If you try to correlate variables with outputs, that's more the realm of statistics. Right. With machine learning, you feed in all the input data. It would learn its own internal rules for how variables are related to predictions and give you a prediction. So it's kind of, if you have a good data set, then you don't need to worry about that problem so much.
Okay, let's assume that we have a really, really good data set. A typical property developer would like to utilize some kind of a tool to help them optimize their project, or at least make a research. What comes into play next?
The thing is with machine learning is it's not fully automatic. Really, it's not, we don't have AI that learns for itself or something. Really, we set up the problem and we define that problem through the data set. So what would happen is that, someone like me would sit down and we would work out, what is the problem you're solving? What is the data you have? And we frame the problem in a machine learning context. What are the inputs? What's the outputs?
Right. And how available are some of these inputs in terms of the machine being able to scrape the internet for data on weather or data on building materials or those kind of things?
A lot of that data is accessible.
Okay.
I guess where it might be harder to get data is on specific projects, because if that's the internal data of companies. So you would have to be a little clever about how you actually access data and what you can get.
And what about architects? How can architects in the research phase utilize machine learning?
So as we mentioned before, there are tools for turning text into images, and they can be quite specific. So you could give descriptions of buildings and landscapes, and it could come up with 100 different concept pictures that look realistic.
What are some of these tools? If you want to touch on that.
So that's like DALL-E 2, imaging from Google, Midjourney, which is more like stylized artistic work, but it might still be useful. You can also, it can be interactive in that you can draw how you want the outline of the building to look, kind of like, a cardboard view of it, and then have it fill in the detail automatically and things like that. So it's a productivity tool there, saving an artist's time having to fill in all that. But it can be useful for ideation in coming up with things that maybe you wouldn't have thought of, and then you use that as inspiration for your final product. There are also tools for generating 3D models as well. And so you could give a description of the kind of building you want, or just generate a lot of randomly generated buildings that might give you ideas of where to go to next, or what the alternatives are. And there are some tools, I know Autodesk are exploring this, and there's ArchiStar as another available tool for that.
But that's more for, let's say, optimization on property developments, or can it also be used for research?
I think it'd be used for research. ArchiStar say that it's useful because you're de-risking the project by being able to look maybe for some gotchas or some trade-offs in the development at a very early stage, like within a couple of minutes. So you could be looking at, 50 different possible sites and just very quickly see, what's the shadowing like, or the airflow or something like that.
And look, it's a personal question for us as 3D visualization companies. Is it likely that we'll be out of a job within who knows how long period of time?
Where we're at the moment, those auto-generated models are fairly basic, and I think that they would still be able to produce kind of maybe buildings that are not valid in some sense, or don't follow the rules. So I would say that a lot of these tools we're talking about, probably all the tools, they're more like productivity tools as a co-pilot for the human operators. They're not replacing the person, it's just saving the person time, or maybe triggering an idea, which is a concept that artists have used for decades of using randomness or inspiration from different places to come up with ideas. That's where we're at now. Where we'll be in the future, or how long that will take, who knows. But yeah, all these tools have issues, even if you're using ChatGPT just to research about some locations or some services or something like that, that it can just produce factually incorrect output. And the more specific you get, the more likely that's to be the case.
Right, okay. So the more factual you put in the information, the more likely the machine is bound to be wrong. Is that what you're saying?
Well, these models, they learn from data and they find patterns by seeing the same thing again and again in data.
Right.
So, if you ask it questions about, British history, medieval history or something, there's so much content on the internet about that it's seen it many, many times, and it gives you very reliable, solid answers. But if you start getting into specifics about, a not very well-known person in a town that nobody's ever heard of, then maybe it's only seen that once or twice on the internet. It hasn't had much to learn from, and so it might get it half right.
So that sort of brings us to the topic of big data, and there is this term out there. What does it actually mean for, let's say, building designers or property developers?
So machine learning models give better results the more data you give them. So you can always do something with less data, even with, one example in some cases, but the more data you have, the better outcome you'll get from machine learning.
So that's a very sort of simple and layperson explanation of what big data really means. Perfect. Look, that's all that we sort of wanted to touch on within the research phase. Next time around, we'll talk more about content creation. There's a lot of tools to discover there. Thanks so much for watching. See you again.